We are still in Matthew. We are going to be in Matthew 7. We will be starting at verse 15. When you find Matthew 7, verse 15, put a pin there because we are actually going to start at Romans 10. So when you find Matthew 7, put a pin there. And you can keep a pin there because we'll be there for another couple of weeks. But we will actually start at Romans 10 to set up the context so that we can understand what's going on in 7. Romans 10, verse 14. Romans 10, verse 14. So Romans 10, verse 14 reads, "How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they hear, and how shall they preach unless they are sent? And how shall they preach unless they are sent?" So this is a series of questions that leads to the understanding of the foundation of faith. It is the concept that everyone that has not personally laid eyes on Jesus Christ, so those of us that have not laid eyes upon him, you could even suggest that Paul laid eyes upon Jesus there on the road. That's why his words are so powerful in the book. But everybody else, we've got secondhand information. We get secondhand knowledge. Those of us that have not seen him face to face, meaning the disciples, Paul, doubting Thomas, we needed to be told of the goodness and mercy of God. We needed to be told that Jesus is the Son of God. We were not born with that knowledge. It was given to us by someone that was given to them, by someone that was given to them. There are people that are marked out, set aside to do this thing called preach. They are set aside to tell those that are lost about the goodness of Jesus Christ and to remind those that are saved of the goodness of Jesus Christ in both the good and the bad. How will they hear if no one ever preaches it? The answer is they won't. There is no faith. You might say, but we have a book. We have the Bible. That is true. But how would you know that a Bible even existed if someone didn't tell you? It is on the head of the preacher. It is on the shoulders of the preacher to deliver faith to those that would believe. That is both powerful and dangerous. Powerful, yet what? Dangerous. That's a lot of weight to put on one man. But it's a weight that they bear. Why? Because they're so great? No, because they are what? Sent. That is the important part of this concept. That God sends, not man. No matter how much a person may desire to be a preacher, no matter how good it looks, no matter how great it seems to be, if you are not sent to do this thing, you are lost. We are seeing the fruits of the labors of people that have sent themselves to this work. Now, within this context, we're ready now to go to Matthew 7. We'll start at verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistle? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire of hell, into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits, they will know them. Therefore, by their fruits, they will know them. I like this verse a lot, 15 through 20. I like to teach it and preach it often. But today, I'm going to teach it and preach it in a different way. Because today, I'm going to teach it in the correct context in which it was first given. Bless you. You see, the correct context comes from last week's sermon. Last week we talked about verse 13 through 14, right? And we said that everyone must come to God through what? The narrow path. The narrow path. There are two paths. One path is narrow and leads to Jesus. And then there's a larger, wider path that's a much easier, and I will say a golden path that's glistening in the sunshine, and its trees are waving, and they've got the pom-poms, and cheerleaders are cheering around, and they're saying, go, 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 as you usher yourself directly down the easy path to hell. But you see, since they tell you that there's a path, they tell you that there's a path that you must take. It doesn't say can take, right? You have the option to take. It says there is a path that you must take. There's only one. There's a lot of things that say there's many paths to God. Okay, there's many paths to your God, but I don't know there's many paths to our God. Our God has one path, and that path leads through Jesus. And what we just learned in Romans 10 is that you do not know that path unless what? You are preached it. You have no idea. You will be wandering around in the darkness unless somebody comes to you within that darkness and says, hey, you're in the dark, and points you what? To the path. In the context of having the narrow path, you must now understand verse 15. Beware of what? False prophets. I want you to really get this, because it's important to understand the real danger of verse 15. within the context of 13 and 14. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. There are many people that are simply insane. They preach at churches of Satan. You know, Satan has a church now. Did you know that? And there's other people that do witchcraft and all that. And you know, these people, they're not false prophets. They're telling you who they are. They're getting very clear. They tell you, hey, you come follow me, and this is what we're doing. We're going to be here. They're not false prophets. They're telling you directly who they are. And I thank them for that. I shake their hand. I say, thank you for letting me know who you are. So now I can come face to face and I can choose to either reject or accept. They are not false prophets. These people have marked themselves out to be our enemies, and we meet our enemies at the battleground face to face, gun to gun, and say, thank you for marking it like I have marked myself out to be their enemy. Did you not know that you are their enemy? They pray for your downfall every day. And in our prayers, we are anti them, which is praying for their downfall. Someone's going to win in this war. And it's not going to be them. They're not false prophets. That's not what's being talked about here in verse 15. The church of Satan is not found in verse 15. They're telling you, this is what we do. The Church of Scientology, they're telling you what they do. They're very clear. They're not false prophets. The false prophets stand in churches much like this one. And they pretend to be preachers and pastors. They pretend to give you the light and show you the path. These are the false prophets that they're talking about. What makes them dangerous is because if they are false prophets, they are leading you down a path that is not the narrow path. But you don't know it because they come in the same look, in the same skin, in the same mask as that of an actual prophet. Why would they do this? I just told you, the preacher has power. Why do I say that? Because within the hand of the preacher is the salvation. And if I can sell you that salvation, how much would you buy it for? If I told you it cost $1, would you pay it? If I told you it cost $100, would you pay it? If I told you it cost your whole life, everything, sell it all and give it to me, would you pay it? If I told you that that's the way to salvation, you would pay it. You pay everything. So now you get some people that are standing on the outside. And they're sitting there and they're looking at the real thing. And they're looking at the real thing. And they're saying the real thing's doing it wrong because you're poor. But I got an idea. I can monetize this thing. I see that you have power, but you don't wield it because you're poor. But I got an idea. What if I can take that same concept and charge a little bit for it? What if I could take that same concept, that same thing, the real thing? I've seen the real thing. And I could take the real thing and instead of feeding people, make them feel good. And in your feeling good, You're going to reject the real thing because the real thing doesn't feel good all the time. So you reject the real thing. And now I've got you. And now that you're with me and you're feeling good, I'm telling you, hey, because you feel good, I want you to go out and I want you to march in the streets for it. I want you to give me everything you got for it. And when it doesn't work, I tell you, your faith failed you. When the healing cloth that you paid $1,000 for doesn't heal the cancer, I tell you, you didn't believe hard enough. When we've marched and we've marched and we've marched and we've walked the streets and we've shed light and we've had all the speeches and people still die in the street, I tell you, your faith didn't faith hard enough. You see, this is the problem. These people put on sheep's clothes because they've seen the real thing and they imitate it. But they weren't called to it. So even if they had good intentions, even if they wanted to be the real sheep, they can't, because the real sheep has to be what? According to Romans 10, has to be what? Called to it. So even if you want to do it, you will eventually veer off the path. What does it say? Absolute power corrupts what? Absolutely. That's what the world says. It does, unless what? God. That's why you see my pastor died. He died a poor man. Didn't have nothing. You ask him, he said, man, I made mistakes. I wouldn't have changed a thing. There were people that came after him that drove Rolls Royces. They say, Bishop, you're doing it the wrong way. Bishop, you're doing it the wrong way. I have lunch with the mayor. I drive a Rolls Royce. My suit is worth more than your house. Bishop, you're doing it the wrong way. And Bishop say, well, okay, we'll see in the end. You see, when you look at verse 15 through 20, and you look at it within the context of 13 to 14, you understand the power that exists in these type of problems that comes from following these sheep that are really wolves. What does a wolf do? Well, it tells you in 7 verse 6, do not give holy things to what? Animals. They will just trample it. And then they will what? Turn on you. That's the fruit that he's talking about here. That's the fruit that Jesus is talking about here. He says, look at your life. Look at if have you grown or have you not? Is God with you or not with you? Have you learned or have you not? You can be in church for 50 years and have nothing to show. No faith, no growth. I've been to these places. They give and the churches are massive and huge. And they say, look at how financially sound we are. Look, all of us have all this money. But you ask them spiritually, what do you do to get the money? But don't ask that. Don't ask that. But what happens when you no longer have to give? What happens if you no longer can give the wolf meat? You run out of the meat to give. What happens then? Then the wolf what? Turns on you and devours you. Because the wolf does not care about you. The wolf only cares about himself. How do you know the difference? You tell it by the fruit that it bears. We confuse fruit with financial gain. Bishop was a poor man. No one would envy his life. He died poor. But when he died, Los Angeles stopped for a day. All of his sons sat in the first rows of a church like a cathedral, 20 or 30 of them. The first rows, all of them with successful ministries. He died with nothing so that we could have this. Look at the fruit that he bore. Worth more than sitting with the mayor. Worth more than sitting and driving an expensive luxury car. Look at what fruit he bore when he died. When you see the fruit is in the life of the people that the preacher affects. For me, you are my fruit. And the people that listen to this message afterwards, long after I'm dead, maybe somebody will come and listen to this message and they will bear fruit. Fruit is more. You will bear fruit. You will know your life. You will know your life by not now, because now you're living it, but when you die, and your children, and your children's children, and your family, and your friends come, you can see the fruit that you have borne. The tree looks around and sees nothing but trees. It doesn't realize that the apples that it made has fed thousands. Every time we go to a store and we buy a fruit, a tree bore that. The tree doesn't see the fruit that you're eating. It doesn't know that you're eating it. It just knows that it's borne a good fruit for you. It's easy to look at our lives now and say, oh, it's so hard. What have I done? Where am I going? But you see, the fruit always plays out in the lives of others. And if you can look out over your life and you can see that maybe some places we failed, but in these other places we have borne good fruit. You see, that's the difficulty with this. People heap upon themselves these preachers that will come and tell them these warming things. I was listening to a very large funeral. All of these great men were there. And one great woman. And they all spoke at this funeral. All of the great men, Tommy, you hear me? The funeral of this dead man. And you know what they spoke about? Themselves. Themselves. Do you see? They all called themselves to this funeral to heap upon themselves great things for themselves. Like the wolves they are, they ate that poor boy's funeral. They ate it up so that there was no place to mourn for his death. No room for him to be mourned and remembered. No. It's all about me. So all these great men with their beautiful suits and music, they all spoke wonderful words. But they all meant nothing. Nothing at all. The sad part about this is that often I preach this in the context of a normal life. But really, the context is within the life of the church. It's a warning to each and every one of you and to myself that we must be mindful of those who will put us on our path and the way that we put people on a path. Because even though you may not be a preacher like myself, called to do this thing, you are in someone's life sent to be a preacher. So now the question is, what road do you send them on? Sometimes saying the hard thing to someone, it's hard. It's hard. It's easier to just take out the pom-poms and cheer them on. It's easier when you see them walking down the large road, the golden path. It's easier to just give them a little nudge. Good job. And pat on the back as they walk. It's harder to stand in the middle of the road and say, no, you're going the wrong way. You go that way. Go that way. It's harder to do that. It's harder to do that. So it's easier to just go with the path of least resistance. But I'll tell you, you are sent by God. You may be the only voice in the middle of the wilderness. So the question is, what fruit do we bear in the life of those that we are sent to be a preacher to? Preaching is more than standing here. This is what I do on Sunday. The question is, what do we do on Monday? Who in our life are we called to? I'll end with this simple story. I'm a preacher today, but I attend a Bible study, and I try hard to not be a preacher there. I try to just be a member and a listener. But sometimes I'm marked out for this thing, you see. So a man he asks a simple question. He says, now mind you, it's early in the morning and I'm very tired and all I want to do is listen. I'm not a preacher. I'm just a member, Tom. You hear me? But the man says, at what point do we have to stop? At what point, do I ever just cut somebody off? And I said, everybody is saying, no, you just lay down and let him just walk all over you. You never stop giving. You give until you have nothing else left to give. And the good Lord said, Aaron, you have to tell him. So I said, no, sir, Do you hear? There's at least 20 other men on this line, and each one of them has the pom-poms out, and they're cheering him on. And even those that were trying to tell him to not, they're starting to bend and waver too. And it's easier to just push him down that nice brick road of acceptance and of affirming. We have to affirm, right, Wanda? We have to affirm people's lives, right? We have to affirm. We never say stop. We just affirm. We affirm everything. You want to dress like a woman? We affirm it. You want to dress like a man? We affirm it. You want to cut off your genitals? We affirm it. We affirm it all. Hey, have it. Just affirm, right? So the guy's like, so everyone, and he's feeling good. You can see it in his face. He's like, oh, I finally got the answers that I wanted. I will just continue to let this man walk all over me. And I said, no, sir, you got to stop. You got to stop. You got to stop. You got to cut him off. It's not right. God didn't make you as a doormat. You're not a doormat. God made you a person. You got to stop. Cut him off. Do you know the backlash I got for the next hour? From him too. Halfway through it, they all attack. The ministers on the line, they're trying to hold back the attack, but they can't because people feel bad. So, they're trying to affirm. So now I was like, look, the Bible says, and I hit them with the Bible. So, after they can't attack the Bible, guess who they attack? Guess who they attack? They attack me personally. What type of pastor would say that to a man? Not a pastor I know. Pastors I know love people. They love, and every pastor I know is a doormat for the Lord. I said, oh, you're going to attack me? All right, I'll take the attack. But I still say what I said. I'm not backing down. Now, that's hard. It's easier to just take out the pom-poms and cheer him on while he's being used. Just cheer him on. Go ahead on. Be used. Be used up. We have to stand strong on our own principles. We have to stand strong on what God tells us. That's all we got. We don't got anything else. The world, we don't have the world no more. We don't have a government. We don't have any of that no more. None of that. We only have what? The Bible and the principle. And everything else is everything else. They're passing laws right now to contradict everything we believe. So if we don't have our own principles, then what do we got? If God sends you to say it, say it. And if people hate you for it, then they don't hate you. What do they hate? They hate God. And that's for them to deal with. But if God told you to do it, then you do what God told you to do and let the chips fall where they may. Because at the end of the day, that may be the one thing that saves their life. God sent you to do a thing, then do that thing. God sent me to do a thing, so I try to do a thing. Sometimes I fall down. Sometimes I miss a call. I should make a call. Sometimes I miss a call that you guys make. Sometimes I say things that make you agitated and angry. Sometimes you call Wanda in fury. It's okay. I understand. I'm not perfect. Close to it though. Ask Joe. But we're all sent to do a thing in someone's life to bear good fruit. And if we can say that we do that, then we may lead them on the path that they need to lead. And then in that point, we can say, we have done that which God asked us to do. And that's it. That's all we can do. That's all. I do not know if that man is still a doormat to this day. But I called the minister. I called him afterwards. I felt bad. Like, dude. Then I come to find out that this dude's son is just as an alcoholic, taking advantage of him, ruining his business, ruining his marriage, ruining his life. I didn't know any of that. But I didn't need to know. But God reaffirmed for me because he saw that I felt bad. So God gave me the reaffirmation that I was doing the right thing. Sometimes you're not going to get that affirmation. Sometimes you don't need the affirmation. Just know that if God asked you to point somebody on the hard path, then that's going to be a hard fight. And then no one's going to like it. And they're not going to like you. They're not going to like what you're saying. They're going to hate you. They're going to whatever they need to do. But at the end of the day, if they're going the way God told them to go, then that's it. That's it. And to do anything else is to be a wolf, devouring them up. Amen. See you Wednesday.